The sky above was no longer blue. It was a deep, unnatural shade of gray, heavy with the looming shadow of the Dominion's colossal ships. They appeared almost overnight, darkening the atmosphere with their sheer scale and the quiet hum of their gravity engines. 100 miles long, each ship resembled a floating city of obsidian and silver, their surfaces smooth and seamless, as if crafted from the bones of an unknown ancient creature. The world watched in stunned silence as the ships entered Earth's orbit, blocking out the sun and sending an eerie chill across the planet. It started with a broadcast, a cold, emotionless transmission that crackled through every communication channel on Earth. At first, humanity assumed it was a hoax, some elaborate piece of disinformation. But then the words came again, clear as day, delivered in every known language. "We are the Dominion. You have been found lacking. Surrender your planet or face your obliteration." The voice, harsh, metallic, and deeply resonant, echoed through every home, every television screen, and every device. It was the voice of the Colossians, the rulers of this alien empire, a race so ancient and powerful that they were more myth than fact to the average person. 1,000 years of conquest, of annihilating entire worlds in the name of order, had earned them the fear of every species they encountered. Now, humanity was their next target. Chaos erupted. Governments scrambled to respond. World leaders, dazed and unsure, held emergency meetings, their war rooms filled with fear and confusion. At first, the response was tepid. Military leaders from major powers argued over which countermeasures could even be effective against such an advanced race. Nations tried to unite, but old grudges resurfaced. The UN, fractured and ineffective, could do little but issue vague condemnations, their diplomatic efforts strangled by internal politics. By the time the first wave of Dominion bombardments hit, the world had already descended into panic. The first targets were cities: New York, Beijing, Moscow, Cairo. The Dominion ships opened fire with precision, their weapons sending beams of brilliant energy that tore through buildings like paper. There was no warning, no time to evacuate. Millions perished in an instant. The news outlets showed images of towering structures collapsing in on themselves, vaporized into ash by weapons humanity had no name for. In the streets, people ran in all directions, unsure where to go, what to do. The atmosphere, thick with dust and smoke, felt like the end of the world had arrived. Governments declared martial law, but it was clear. The world was unraveling faster than they could respond. The emergency broadcasts were interrupted by Dominion messages, reiterating their ultimatum: surrender or face extinction. But there was something in the eyes of those who watched the sky darken. The quiet realization that humanity had one thing the Colossians did not understand: the ability to fight, to adapt, to survive. Marcus Vail, a former military commander turned civilian in the wake of the world's political collapse, stood in the ruined streets of New York, watching the sky. He was a man who had seen wars, but nothing like this. Yet he knew something that the Dominion could not comprehend. Earth's people, though divided, were not easily cowed. The fire that burned in humanity's chest had never gone out. It would never go out. And as the smoke from the cities drifted into the sky, Marcus swore to himself that he would find a way to ignite it once again. In the heart of the chaos, a whisper of hope flickered. It came not from government officials or the military elite, but from a small group of individuals, disparate, unconnected, yet united by a single burning desire: survival. They were the resistance. In secret bunkers and abandoned military bases across the globe, the last remnants of Earth's armed forces, scientists, and civilians began to gather. They understood the odds. Against the Dominion, they were nothing more than insects. But humanity had never been a species to bend its knees to oppression. They had only one choice: fight. Marcus Vail, a man hardened by the wars of the past, knew what was coming. The world's fragile hope rested in a fragile plan: hit the Dominion where it hurt, find a weakness, exploit it, and perhaps, just perhaps, there would be a chance for victory. He was no strategist, but even he knew one undeniable truth. If humanity was to survive, they would need a miracle. Maya Chen, an engineer who had once worked on secret weapons projects, stood before a chalkboard in one of the Resistance's underground bases. The air in the room was thick with tension. A map of the Dominion's fleet was spread out before her, each ship marked with cold precision. As she ran her fingers across the data, a spark of realization lit up her eyes. She wasn't just a weapons designer anymore. Now she was humanity's last hope. "It's all in their shields," Maya muttered, almost to herself. "Their technology is more advanced than anything we have, but there's something we can exploit. Their shields are frequency-based, and we've just been hitting them with raw power, but we can turn the tables." She turned to the gathered Resistance commanders. "I can build a pulse, a frequency wave that bypasses their shields completely. If we can deploy it at the right frequency, we might actually bring their ships down." The room went silent. This wasn't just a breakthrough. It was the key to survival. But there were complications: time, resources, and the Dominion's near-omniscient surveillance network. It was a race against the clock. Every day that passed meant more destruction, more lives lost, more cities turned to ash. The human spirit, however, refused to break. Across the globe, small victories began to surface. Local militias fought back against Dominion patrols. A cell in Paris managed to steal vital data on the Dominion supply chain. The city of Sao Paulo mounted a successful guerrilla attack on a Dominion staging ground. These weren't decisive wins, but they were proof of something the Dominion hadn't expected. Humanity was willing to fight, and fight dirty. But these were only flashes of resistance in a sea of fear. Then came the moment of truth. The Dominion issued another message, cold and final. "Submit. There is no hope." The deadline for humanity's extinction loomed. The Dominion was preparing for their final strike, a full-scale attack that would obliterate the last of the world's military forces and bring Earth to its knees. The Resistance's plan was a gamble. A small, highly trained team would infiltrate a Dominion supply convoy deep within enemy territory, steal essential components, and sabotage the convoy shields, allowing Maya's frequency weapon to reach them. It was a mission with a nearly 0% chance of success, and Marcus was chosen to lead it. His reputation as a leader in the field of combat made him the perfect candidate, but it also made him realize the stakes. Failure meant death. But failure meant more than just his own death. It meant the end of humanity. "Don't let them take our will," Marcus said to his team, his voice low but resolute. "We can do this. We have to do this." As they set out for their mission, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that this would either be the spark of humanity's rebellion or the moment they sealed their own doom. With each step, he felt the weight of the world pressing down on him. But he also felt something else, the undeniable fire of defiance. The Resistance's mission was a success, but it came at a steep cost. The convoy had been sabotaged, but not without bloodshed. Marcus and his team returned battered and broken, but they brought with them something invaluable, a critical piece of Dominion technology. The shield component, though damaged, was precisely what Maya needed to complete her weapon. The Resistance could feel the weight of humanity's hopes resting on her shoulders. Back in the underground lab, Maya worked tirelessly, her hands shaking not from fear, but from the sheer magnitude of the task ahead. She and her team of engineers labored day and night, attempting to reverse engineer the alien technology. The Dominion shields were like nothing humanity had ever encountered, layers of energy fields designed to absorb and deflect any attack. But there was a weakness in the frequency modulation, a flaw Maya had spotted when they had accessed the data. It was subtle, hidden beneath layers of advanced encryption. But it was there. To exploit this weakness, she would need to construct a pulse weapon of unprecedented power. The Fury Protocol, as they called it, was based on a simple but deadly principle: a massive energy burst that could bypass the Dominion's shields entirely, striking at the heart of their fleet. However, the power required to generate the pulse would be monumental. No single source of energy on Earth could supply the amount needed, not even close. Maya's eyes fell on the old military facilities map. Deep beneath the Earth, in a long-forgotten research base, lay something that could power the Fury Protocol, a collapsed star's energy, stored in a massive containment chamber. The star, once a powerful source of research, had been buried for decades after a catastrophic event left the facility abandoned. No one had dared to touch it since then, but it was humanity's last hope. "Marcus," Maya said, her voice tight with determination, "we need to get to that facility. It's our only shot." Marcus nodded, already formulating a plan. "We'll need a team to extract the energy and bring it back here. But the Dominion knows about this base. They've likely sent scouts. We'll have to move fast." The task was monumental. Not only did the team have to navigate through Dominion-controlled zones, but they also had to avoid detection long enough to reach the facility. Every step they took could be their last. Meanwhile, across the world, the Dominion's final assault preparations were underway. A fleet of warships gathered at the edges of Earth's atmosphere, their weapons primed for total annihilation. The Colossians were relentless in their pursuit of extinction, and it was clear now that Earth had only days, perhaps hours, before the final strike. The Resistance knew they couldn't wait any longer. The Fury Protocol had to be ready. They had to strike first. As Marcus and his team prepared to depart, an eerie silence fell over the bunker. Every person in that room knew what was at stake. Failure meant the end of Earth, the complete obliteration of humanity. But there was a fierce resolve in their eyes, an unspoken bond that had formed among them during the long months of war. "Let's show them what humans are capable of," Marcus said, his voice low, steady. "We don't surrender." The team set out at once, driving deep into enemy territory. Their path was treacherous, but they moved with a purpose, knowing that each step brought them closer to saving the world, or condemning it forever. As they neared the facility, the Dominion's looming ships cast dark shadows over the land, a constant reminder of the weight of their mission. But for Marcus, Maya, and the others, the world had already ended once before. This time, they would make sure it wouldn't be the final one. The journey to the long-forgotten military facility was treacherous, a labyrinth of rocky terrain, collapsed infrastructure, and overgrown wilderness. Marcus and his team, moving with stealth and urgency, couldn't afford any delays. The Dominion surveillance network was everywhere, their drones patrolling the skies, watching every move. Every inch they moved was a calculated risk, but the stakes had never been higher. They finally arrived at the facility, a sprawling underground complex, half buried beneath miles of rock. It had been abandoned after a catastrophic event during the early days of the war, and much of the facility's contents were thought to be lost to time. But Maya, now leading the team through the ruins, knew that the star-powered energy cores were their last hope. The place was eerily silent, the hum of distant machinery barely audible. It was as if the facility had been frozen in time. As they descended deeper into the compound, the air grew colder, and the oppressive silence seemed to close in on them. Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching them. Something more than just the Dominion. Maya stopped in front of a massive reinforced door, ancient and rusted, but still holding. "This is it," she said, her voice quiet, reverent. She quickly ran a diagnostic on the door's access panel. Her fingers flew across the control pad, decrypting layers of security protocols that had been in place for decades. As the door slid open with a deep groaning sound, they entered a vast chamber where the heart of the facility lay, the energy core. But it wasn't just any power source. The core, a mass of unstable, compressed stellar energy, had the power to fuel the Fury Protocol and destroy the Dominion's shields. It had the potential to change the tide of the war, or end humanity itself if mishandled. But just as Maya moved to start the extraction process, something caught her eye. In the far corner of the chamber, half hidden behind a pile of old equipment, she noticed a set of ancient files, seemingly untouched. They were sealed in a container, locked away as if someone had been trying to keep them hidden. She pulled them free, and the moment she opened them, the room seemed to hum with a strange energy. What she found inside shocked her to her core. A set of records that described an ancient civilization, one that existed long before humanity's rise. The documents spoke of a race of beings called the First Ones, a species that had once dominated the galaxy, only to fall to an even older empire, the Dominion. According to the records, Earth had been the home of the First Ones. And more chillingly, the records indicated that humanity itself might be the descendants of these ancient beings. "What is this?" Maya whispered, her voice shaky with disbelief. This isn't just an energy source. This is connected to us." Marcus, sensing her growing concern, moved closer. "What are you talking about?" "These records," Maya stammered, her mind racing. "They tell of the First Ones using the same kind of technology, the same methods for bending stellar energy. And they mention humanity. That we, Earth's people, were once their inheritors." It felt as though the walls of the room were closing in on them. This discovery wasn't just about a power source. It was about their very origins. Humanity wasn't a helpless species after all. They had been forged by the same cosmic fire that once powered the most powerful empire in the galaxy. They were born from a legacy of power and resilience that had survived the fall of the First Ones. Suddenly, Marcus's mind raced with the implications. If the Dominion knew this, if they knew that Earth was not only a strategic target, but a world tied to their ancient enemies, would they be more ruthless in their desire to extinguish humanity? Could the Dominion have been hiding the truth about Earth's true power from the very beginning? "We need to get this information back to the others," Marcus said, his voice now steely. "This changes everything." But as they turned to leave, the lights in the chamber flickered, and a sharp metallic voice echoed through the facility's halls. "You've discovered the truth, but the truth will be your undoing." The voice was unmistakably Dominion. Marcus froze. "We're not alone." The resistance team braced for impact, realizing they had triggered something far worse than they anticipated. The Dominion had known all along. They had been tracking them. And now, it was time for humanity to face the true cost of awakening the past. The Dominion's voice echoed in the depths of the facility like a death knell. It was everywhere, rising from the walls, the floor, the very air around them. The message was clear. You've discovered the truth, but the truth will be your undoing. The team froze in place, hearts pounding in their chests. Maya clutched the ancient records tightly, her eyes wide with the weight of the revelation. The Dominion had been watching them all along. Before Marcus could react, a loud crash echoed from the far side of the chamber. The ground shook, and the metallic sound of heavy boots reverberated through the walls. The Dominion's elite soldiers, known as the Zolthor, had arrived. "Move," Marcus barked, and the team snapped into action. They sprinted for the exit, but the tunnel was narrow, and the Dominion soldiers were closing in fast. The Zolthor were nearly unstoppable. Immense, armored warriors capable of tearing through steel like it was paper. Their advanced weaponry hummed ominously as they descended upon the resistance team. Maya's mind raced. The records in her hands were a lifeline, proof of Earth's forgotten heritage. They could not fall into Dominion hands. "We can't let them take this," she muttered under her breath, as she shoved the documents into her pack. Marcus's gaze locked with hers. "Get to the surface. I'll hold them off." "No," she protested. "You're not. I don't have time for this. Go." The team hesitated for a moment, but Marcus's voice left no room for argument. They darted towards the exit, moving with the speed and precision that the resistance had honed in the last months of war. Behind them, Marcus turned to face the incoming assault. His pulse quickened, but he kept his composure. The Dominion wanted to destroy them, but they had underestimated humanity's will to survive. They were more than just a threat to be obliterated. They were a force to be reckoned with. As the Zolthor soldiers charged forward, Marcus unslung his rifle. He fired off a series of shots, the sound of the gunfire echoing through the chamber as it connected with their armored exoskeletons. The Zolthor barely flinched, their energy shields deflecting the bullets. But Marcus didn't stop. He fired again and again, moving with calculated desperation. He was buying time. He had to. Suddenly, the ground beneath him trembled, and a deafening roar filled the air. A massive blast ripped through the chamber. Maya had triggered an explosive charge they had planted earlier as a last-ditch contingency. The explosion sent the Zolthor soldiers tumbling back, their ranks disoriented. The blast gave Marcus the precious seconds he needed. "Go!" Marcus shouted again, his voice strained as he took aim, using the distraction to cover the team's escape. Maya, now out of the chamber, turned to look back, but she saw only the cloud of smoke from the explosion and the flash of Marcus's rifle fire. He was holding the line, keeping the enemy at bay long enough for the rest of them to get out. Her heart ached, but there was no time to linger. The mission came first. As the team emerged into the open air, they realized the true scope of their mission. The Fury Protocol, now closer to completion, with the star-powered energy source in their possession, was humanity's last chance, but the Dominion's pursuit would only intensify from here. The Resistance had no illusions left. They were fighting not just for survival, but for a future that the Dominion would not allow them to have. Yet, in the midst of all the despair, there was a flicker of hope. The records had revealed a truth that shook the very foundations of the Dominion's empire. Earth wasn't just a random planet in the galaxy. It was a place of untapped power, the true legacy of a species long thought extinct. And the Dominion had feared that truth for millennia. Now, humanity had to wield it. As Maya glanced at the rest of the team, their faces grim but determined, she knew one thing for certain. This fight was far from over. The Dominion had miscalculated. They had believed humanity weak, a species on the verge of extinction. But now they would learn that the fire that had once forged the first ones still burned in the hearts of Earth's people. The tide was turning, and it would not be the Dominion who decided the outcome. The Resistance's retreat was a blur of adrenaline and fear. The explosion had bought them time, but only a few precious minutes. As Maya and the others raced toward the rendezvous point, the sound of Dominion warships growing louder in the distance sent a shiver through their spines. The Dominion had no intention of letting them leave the facility alive. Their strike force was already mobilizing, and the relentless hunt for humanity's secrets had begun in earnest. Maya's heart pounded in her chest as they made their way through the desolate terrain, a wasteland that had once been a thriving military complex. The stars above flickered dimly through the thick clouds that hung in the sky, a result of the Dominion's bombings. Everything on Earth seemed to be either burning or dying, and yet, in the face of such destruction, there was a glimmer of hope, the star-powered energy core they had extracted, the key to humanity's final weapon. As they neared the makeshift shuttle that would take them to the hidden Resistance base, Maya couldn't help but glance down at the records she carried. The secrets they contained were far more than she had ever imagined. They held the truth of Earth's origin, of a forgotten past tied to the first ones, and of the ancient powers that had shaped the galaxy long before the Dominion's rise. She couldn't shake the realization that this information was far more dangerous than any weapon she had ever designed. If the Dominion learned of it, they wouldn't just try to annihilate humanity. They would stop at nothing to erase every trace of Earth's legacy from the universe. "Maya, we need to move faster," one of the Resistance soldiers, Jace, called out, snapping her from her thoughts. She nodded, but the weight of the records felt heavier with each step. The truth was a dangerous thing to possess, but there was no turning back now. She knew too much, and she wasn't about to let the Dominion have it. When they finally reached the shuttle, they found it waiting for them, cloaked and ready for immediate departure. The vehicle's engines hummed softly as Maya and the others climbed aboard. The door sealed behind them with a reassuring hiss, and the shuttle lifted off, climbing into the sky. The Resistance's last hope was now in their hands. As they ascended, Maya felt the sudden, crushing weight of the situation. The Dominion wasn't just an invader. They were a force that had once conquered the galaxy, eradicating civilizations with ruthless efficiency. And now they were poised to finish what they had started, to wipe Earth from the stars. But there was a spark of defiance, an ember of resistance that would not be snuffed out. If humanity could tap into its lost legacy, if they could harness the power of the first ones, they might stand a chance. The shuttle's communication system flickered to life, the voice of Resistance Command coming through with a crackle. "Maya, we've been monitoring Dominion movements. They've mobilized a fleet to intercept you. They know you're coming." Her stomach sank. The Dominion was already closing in on their location. Their only option now was to make it to the underground base before the fleet arrived. And time was running out. "Maya," the voice continued, "we've detected a massive Dominion fleet on the move. They'll be here within hours. We need that weapon operational, or this fight is over before it even begins." The pressure mounted, but Maya knew that they had one shot. They had to make it to the base, and they had to finish the Fury Protocol. There was no room for failure. Not anymore. The shuttle veered sharply to the left, diving into a series of narrow canyons that would keep them hidden from Dominion radar. As they sped through the terrain, Maya stared out of the window, watching the dark sky overhead. The weight of the records pressed against her chest, and she made a silent vow. She would not let the Dominion destroy humanity. She would fight for the future of Earth, no matter the cost. But as the shuttle raced toward the Resistance's hidden stronghold, Maya couldn't shake the nagging thought. Could the secrets of the first ones truly be their salvation, or were they a curse that would doom them all? The answer lay ahead, in the final confrontation with the Dominion. The shuttle raced through the jagged canyon, the faint sound of its engines a whisper against the roaring winds outside. Maya sat at the console, her fingers dancing over the controls with practiced precision, trying to keep the ship steady despite the turbulence. Behind her, the rest of the team was silent, each member lost in their own thoughts, consumed by the enormity of what lay ahead. The Dominion fleet was closing in, and they had mere hours before Earth's last hope would be annihilated. The Resistance base, nestled deep within a vast underground complex, was only a few more miles away. It was one of Earth's most secure locations, hidden beneath miles of solid rock, shielded from the Dominion's surveillance. They had created it to be a place of last resort, but it had now become the birthplace of humanity's final stand. Maya's mind raced. The star-powered energy core, the Fury Protocol, was their last chance to make a difference. But the task at hand wasn't simple. Even with the energy core in their possession, Maya knew the weapon she had to construct would require more than just raw power. It would take every ounce of her engineering skill to convert the core's volatile energy into something that could be unleashed against the Dominion. And there was no time for mistakes. The weapon had to be ready in hours. The shuttle's warning systems suddenly blared, the shrill tone piercing the air. "Damn it," Maya cursed under her breath. She slammed her hand on the console. "We've been spotted." Jace, who had been monitoring the ship's sensors, spoke up. "It's a Dominion drone squadron. They're coming in fast." Maya's pulse quickened. The Dominion didn't want them to reach the base. This wasn't just an intercept. It was a preemptive strike. The fleet wouldn't wait for them to finish the weapon. They would obliterate the Resistance base and everything with it. Humanity's final weapon, their only hope, would be wiped out before it even had a chance to be unleashed. Without hesitation, Maya pushed the shuttle's engines to full throttle, sending the ship rocketing toward the narrowest part of the canyon. The walls of jagged stone rushed past, barely inches from the shuttle's hull. The sound of the drone squadron's engines grew louder, and Maya could hear the sharp snap of energy blasts behind them as the Dominion fired from behind. "They're locking on," Jace warned. "We need to shake them off." "I know." Maya gritted her teeth, weaving the shuttle between the canyon walls, doing everything in her power to evade the incoming fire. Her hands flew over the controls, attempting evasive maneuvers that pushed the shuttle to its limits. Another blast rocked the shuttle, sending it careening off course for a moment before Maya regained control. Her eyes narrowed with a mixture of frustration and determination. There was no room for error. Not this close. "Incoming fire," shouted Jace. A volley of energy blasts struck the rear of the shuttle, sparking alarms. The rear shields flickered dangerously. "Hold on," Maya shouted, pulling the shuttle into a sharp vertical climb. The drone squadron pursued, relentless, as they tried to catch up with their prey. But Maya had been trained for this. She was no stranger to evasion, to flying by instinct, and her experience in combat zones gave her the edge she needed. The shuttle shot upward into the thinning air, breaking through a gap in the canyon ceiling. For a moment, the drone squadron hesitated, their targeting systems recalibrating to adjust for the change in altitude. It was all the time Maya needed. With one quick flick of the controls, she angled the shuttle downward, straight toward the Dominion drones. She activated the rear thrusters, sending a burst of fire in a reverse maneuver that sent the shuttle into a dive that took them straight into the heart of the pursuing squadron. The Dominion drones tried to correct, but they weren't fast enough. One by one, the drones began to explode in flashes of light, disintegrating under Maya's precise control. "Nice flying," Jace said, his voice laced with a hint of relief. Maya didn't respond. Her focus was razor-sharp, her mind focused solely on the mission. There was no time for celebration. They had only narrowly escaped, and the Dominion would send more ships. Their last chance at survival was still waiting at the base. Minutes later, the shuttle finally broke through the last set of mountains, revealing the entrance to the Resistance's underground stronghold. Maya exhaled a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. The base was within reach, but the Dominion's fleet was already on its way. They were running out of time. As the shuttle descended into the hidden base, Maya couldn't help but think of Marcus, of what they had left behind at the facility. His sacrifice had given them this moment. But was it enough? Would the Fury Protocol truly be able to turn the tide of war, or was it all a desperate gamble? The final battle was about to begin. The shuttle touched down with a soft thud, its landing gear sinking into the reinforced stone of the underground resistance base. Maya was the first to unbuckle, her movements sharp and purposeful. The rest of the team followed quickly, the urgency in their faces matching the gravity of the moment. They had made it, but just barely. Above them, the Dominion fleet was closing in. Maya's mind was already working, running through calculations as she sprinted toward the central lab where the Fury Protocol had to be finalized. The energy core, now pulsing with dangerous light, was waiting for her. The weapon had to be activated. Now. No more delays. "Jace, set up the perimeter," she instructed. "Get everyone ready. The Dominion won't be far behind." Jace nodded, signaling to the other resistance fighters to move into position. The base's hidden defenses were operational, but they wouldn't be enough to hold back a Dominion fleet. The only thing that could stand between humanity and extinction was the weapon Maya was about to activate. Inside the lab, a small team of engineers worked feverishly, hooking up the star-powered energy core to the Fury Protocol's launch system. The air was thick with tension, the humming of machinery the only sound that filled the room. Maya barely noticed it. Her eyes were locked on the complex control panel in front of her, her fingers flying over it with mechanical precision. "You're sure this will work?" one of the engineers asked, sweat dripping down his face. His voice betrayed a mixture of awe and fear. "I don't know," Maya admitted without looking up, "but it's the only shot we've got." There was a pause. Then, the engineer's voice softened. "Let's just hope the Dominion didn't anticipate this." Maya felt a chill at the thought. The Dominion had a history of being 2 steps ahead. But the records they had recovered, those secrets of the first ones, had given them a glimmer of a chance. If the Fury Protocol worked as intended, the Dominion's shields would be bypassed completely, leaving them vulnerable to a full-on assault. But there was no guarantee it would work. There was no guarantee that it wouldn't backfire and destroy everything in its path, including Earth. But she pushed those doubts aside. They couldn't afford fear now. She glanced at the countdown timer. 10 minutes, she said to herself. The fury of humanity's resistance would be unleashed in 10 minutes. Outside, the distant roar of engines rumbled in the air as the Dominion fleet neared. The first strike would come soon. She could almost feel it in her bones. Jace's voice crackled through the intercom. Maya, they've arrived. The fleet's in orbit. They're preparing for bombardment. She didn't respond. Instead, she hit the final switch, initiating the countdown. The lab lights flickered as the Fury protocol began to hum, the star-powered core glowing brighter and brighter as it charged. It would take everything they had, and more. The tension in the air was unbearable as Maya stepped back from the console. The power surged through the base, shaking the walls. It was happening. But just as they reached the final stages, a voice came through the communications channel. A familiar voice, low and cold, that sent a shiver down Maya's spine. Maya, you think you can defeat us? The voice was unmistakable. It was Admiral Voran, the leader of the Dominion's fleet. Your ancestors were fools, and so are you. You will all die as they did. His words chilled her to the core, but she didn't flinch. This isn't just about us, Voran. It's about humanity's future. The countdown reached its final seconds. Then, with a brilliant flash of light, the Fury protocol's weapon discharged. A massive shockwave of pure, concentrated energy erupted from the base, rippling through the atmosphere and striking the Dominion fleet above. The energy burst cut through the Dominion's shields like paper, annihilating their ships in an instant. For a moment, there was only silence. Then, the explosion echoed through the heavens. The Dominion fleet shattered, their ships disintegrating into nothingness. The skies, once darkened by their ships, were now clear. The sound of the blast resonated through the very air of the planet, signaling to every living thing that humanity had just won its most improbable victory. But as the dust settled, Maya didn't feel the triumph she had imagined. Instead, she stared at the wreckage of the Dominion fleet, knowing full well that the battle was not truly over. This victory, though monumental, was but one step in humanity's long road to reclaiming their place in the universe. They had done it. For now, humanity had survived. But the war was far from over. And Maya knew, deep down, that the true reckoning was still to come.